Hello, everyone. Lisa here. I decided I needed a little bit of playful lights behind me for this intro. One of the goals for my YouTube channel is to help celebrate the world of play and creativity and help people recognize the importance of us embracing these as tools for a better life, for more comprehensive learning, for growth in business, for all of those things. To do that, I want to have interesting conversations with interesting people. So I have teamed up with Dr. Luke Perrone, who is a play activist, an author, and a social therapeutic coach. We've collaborated on different projects together, and I love Luke's enthusiasm for improvisation and playfulness in everything he approaches. So we wanted to see what would happen if we started having conversations. Now, trust me, for this podcast, we'll be bringing in guests, we'll be bringing interesting topics, but for this first one, we just decided to get to know each other a little better. I hope you enjoy. All our information will be down below. I don't know where to begin. So I'm interested in how you got to where you are right now. Like, how did you discover improv and play and the connection between that and social and community building and all of that stuff?
Oh, thank you for that question and curiosity. Uh, the the brief answer, which can always, of course, be I can't say more, is that back when I was in undergrad, more than 30 years ago at this point, um, I was in a program at my university where I didn't have any university requirements. I could take whatever classes I wanted. I could study whatever I wanted as long as it fit my bigger plans of what was coming
Hmm.
up for me. But the only requirement was doing a senior project slash research experience or thesis or something like that. And I had been doing a lot of coursework and life experiences around teaching adults English as a new language, international students in this case. And I had also taken acting classes and other kinds of arts things, poetry. And what emerged for me as I was getting ready to have to come up with what that project would be for this program, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to bring the worlds of theater and improv to help folks that I'm teaching learn English more lovingly, more playfully, more holistically? And so I designed a whole semester course for community members and university graduate students, their families, learning English through mime, improv, and drama. We wrote our own plays, we filmed them, we edited them, we invited people to come watch them with us. And then I said, wow, this was such an amazing experience. So the quick final answer is I'm doing this now, however, I keep doing my life, is creating theater and play and improv and more engaged ways to learn and develop. How about for you?
It's kind of similar in a way. I mean, I around the same age, so God, I have a 35th reunion coming up, believe it or not, which is crazy to, to think about.
Yeah, I think I'm on. Is this 19? Is this 24? So we're having we had our 30th. So we're close in age.
Yeah, close,
Yeah.
close. So, I when in my undergrad, I was an English lit major, but I was also doing theater all the time, and I ended up double majoring. And the thing that I struggled with, because I love language, I love English, I love plays, I love all of that, was there was always this kind of divide, like the approach to English language to literature is very you can't it was strict and not playful, and the approach to theater was playful. But I'm like, these plays that I'm reading are literature that are supposed to come to life, and so I always found joy in bringing things to life that way. And then afterwards, I did an internship in a theater, and then I was like, okay, now what do I do with my life? And I ended up going to teach English in Japan.
Yeah. Wow.
And while I was teaching English conversation in Japan, that's when it started all falling into place for me that learned that the best teachers have always made me I learned through doing and acting and playing, and rather than just sitting and talking about books, which I still love to do, don't mind. You know what I mean? But that there's more to it than just having these deep analyses. There's action. And then from there, I decided to get a degree in a master's in directing, and at the University of Hawaii, which you are now in Hawaii, but we didn't meet there. But at University of Hawaii, that's when I started being introduced to. I was studying some Asian theater. I was studying, like, I was being introduced to
Wow.
all of these cultural theater and the question about like how do you communicate across cultural difference and everything. And it just all started kind of falling into place in that way. And then, so it's kind of an academic route for me, but and I remember at that time, so when I lived in Japan, I saw a production of, I think it was Henry V. It was one of the Henrys. I don't remember what it was. But, and yes, I read Shakespeare. I did a lot of Shakespeare study in undergrad, but that was done in Japanese and it was in old Japanese. So even if I spoke Japanese, it's like us hearing Old English, right? So it's not like I would understand. It was the best production of Shakespeare I've ever seen. And it probably helped that I already knew the story, but it was just something about that kind of seeing a story come to life that made me realize that we don't need to understand the same language to be able to communicate it with each other. Does that make sense? So that I carried into like I graduated, I tried to get into the theater world. I realized that that's not like the professional theater world, while I love directing, wasn't my place. I decided to go for a doctorate. I ended up looking at theater for youth because that's part of, learning, teaching, and stuff like that. And then I learned about the theater for social change and using
Mhm.
theater to build communities to help solve problems. And from there, it's just kind of like every step takes another step, and I've discovered
Yeah.
things that make me realize that to me, theater is more a tool than I mean, it's create a product, but it is also really a tool for community building. And that's what I love about it. It's not necessarily to create a product. So it's a long academic journey towards it, but it's also something that I've done my whole life, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear more. I'm really grateful for this. I'd love to hear more about your experiences with or opinions around theater as an activity for community building.
Hmm.
Can you either from your own experiences teaching or other experiences, how has that shown up for you in your artistic and or academic life?
Well, uh, one, a lot of the ways when I was, was it trying to remember when this happened? Okay, so just after I got my doctorate, I lived for a year in Kansas. Like, was it in Kansas? Oh God.
Wow.
Kansas.
Wow.
Yes. Kansas. And it was a tough year for many different reasons, but it was also an interesting year. But I made friends with a woman who's a visual artist who would make kind of the work like what's behind you. She's very much that kind of artist, and it was really fun. And it's funny. And she had a little art studio, and I was teaching at a community college, just teaching some different classes, and someone brought in. There was a group for adults with special needs, like a day program for adults with severe disabilities and stuff like that, that were looking to do some kind of collaboration with I don't remember exactly how it came about, but they ended up with me, and they wanted to do an arts program with these adults. And I was nervous because I'd never worked with that community before, and I didn't
Mm.
know how it. So I invited my artist friend, and we together decided to create uh, um, so she would do puppets, and she would help them create puppets and do art and create like scenery, and I would teach them the improvisation and acting things, and we would work together and create something and kind of wing it. And it was just learning, like for me, that was probably the big step that made me go, oh, this is about bringing people together because I learned to adapt and work with people that I'd never worked with before and find a way to create something
Mm,
while letting go of the, is it perfect and stuff? Because you can't, when you're working with that community, it can't be perfect. It's about the process more than the product in any shape. And then we had ended up having we didn't achieve like the whole goal that we initially started with, but we ended up with scenes and puppets and seeing them like
wow.
create all of these things, and we ended up doing a instead of a full-on public performance, which was what the people originally wanted, we had like a privately public, like invited guests, but it was outdoors. It was in a really cool space, and the families came up and were just, it was just everyone was just so supportive and loving and thanking, recognizing that that people can do more if we work together, and that was. I think very much the beginning for me, where it's like, this is a community
Mm,
building thing. And I've carried that through to do some bigger ones with different groups that are bringing that, like the biggest one I've done was it was combined like three different theater companies, people with disabilities, students, community members, some blah blah blah. Space created their own play, brought it together, and performed it at the big theater in the local city. So that it became broader, and you had a bigger thing, and it was really a community building thing because
wow.
we had like sponsors, and we had, it was a neat thing, and it just. So it's the process of creating has allowed me to see how we can bring people together through creating, and for me, it's not just about theater. I mean, theater's my tool, but the art part is important, or the writing part, or
Mm,
finding I've in some of the programs that I've had, like I had a blind student who helped the seeing sighted students learn what it meant to be blind. We brought a specialist
mm,
in, had them do glass, so you could feel what it meant to in the different ways, because there's different ways of being blind. It's not total darkness or anything like that. And
right.
then I had another one who taught us how to do a dance from her culture. I don't remember what it was. South American somewhere. I don't remember exactly, but taught us how to do a dance. But she wasn't very verbal, and she was blind or going blind. And it was just really, it's just an amazing way of people connecting. And to me, that's where it comes from. Making,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's super powerful. I think your story is a really powerful reminder that just bringing people together, whether it's the
Mhm.
audience for a production or the ensemble of actors, in and of itself isn't community building, but it's about building together something, creating
Yeah.
with all aspects of our humanity,
Hmm.
doing it without knowing what we're doing sometimes, if not always,
Yeah.
focusing on process as well as the product. I just really appreciate those offers that are coming from what you're
Yeah.
relaying from these experiences. Because yeah, just going to the theater is a community event because usually it's in a public and or group space, but you're
Yeah.
pointing to the activity of actually supporting building the community, and the
Yeah.
catalyst can be through the art, the puppetry, the
Yeah.
theater.
I mean, it can be the experience of going to theater, but it's not like just go see a show and then talk to somebody, oh, I really love that, and leave. It's the external stuff. It's, do you have a conversation about it? Do you direct a show, like, because a lot of times I would be directing shows that were for young people, and do the kids write your character you letters, or response, and yeah,
Mm,
usually it's the teacher saying, now write a letter, but you can tell within the letters whether you actually connected with that child or not, and it's that kind of thing. So for me, the product is just a piece of the puzzle. And so I
yeah.
always say a good process brings a good product, because it may not be a perfect product, because there's a difference between, let's put on a Broadway show, which is about perfection, and a show where they're making mistakes, but it's okay because they're doing it. And that's the cool part for me about, or improvised scenes. Watching people who have never been on stage before improvise when something goes wrong, because they trust everyone else around them
Yeah.
is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is an amazing thing. And that's for me what it is, where it comes from. So it's based in the product of theater, but it's more about all of the process that goes into connect. You can't do it without building community and trust between your actors, your audience, and everyone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
How did
yeah.
that importance for you of building community come up with your language teaching? One of the things that we noted we had in common, like for example, just to share, like for me, with that course that I taught all those years ago and built moving forward in new ways since, it reminded me of the power of um, content alone wasn't the only reason we should be together. So in the case of learning English, the grammar, vocabulary, etc., that might be why folks are coming to the physical space isn't the only reason why we should come together. And we should hold space to build time for relationality, build community. So I'm wondering how that focus on community building also showed up for you in your teaching. Like, for example, for me, it came like in addition to all of our class meetings, we got to know each other and celebrate each other's birthdays. We went to have social events together. We spent time learning about each other in and through class activities. And I think that's how I did it 30 years ago. There are new
Yeah.
things I'm doing since, but I'm wondering what you've noticed support people to build community by building more with their full humanity.
I think it all comes down to the that we're only divided by the language. But once you kind of, for me, all right. So when I was in Japan, I had only been there a very short time, and there was since there were children child students. This was a English language academy, so it wasn't teaching about grammar or anything. It was about communication, and so you became friends with the adult students, and I went out with a woman who became a very good friend of mine, and we went to a bar, and I don't think I was drinking, or maybe it was, I don't remember, but and we were playing Othello, the game that with the black and white.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I know. If you ask me the rules, but I know it has like
Yeah, it's like
white and black
basically,
chips.
yeah, black and white chips
Yeah.
and whoever and stuff. And that growing up, that is the only game that I could ever win all the time with my family. It was just like my game. I ruled that game. Okay. I was playing with Akami, my friend, and she beat me. And I remember having this moment, and it was an epiphany of like recognizing prejudice and stuff like that because I didn't
Hmm.
think they were that smart. And the they in this instance was Japanese people, which is totally not, I mean, it was
Ah.
not a conscious like, but having that moment, and then it only took me a minute to go, holy crap, what did I just say in my head? I mean, because I know how racist that sounded in my head. But it
Yes.
was that moment of recognizing that the only thing that was dividing us was the language because we had this game in common and she could beat the pants off of me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it was those kind of moments, those kind of things where you recognize the humanity in some other person because you're doing something that you connects you, whether it's playing a game or improvising or creating a show or whatever you're doing, or trying to have an a conversation in a language where only one of you speaks fluently. You still find ways to communicate and you laugh about it and you make mistakes together and you acknowledge the mistakes, and that's where it's like it's does that answer your question? That's where it's kind of like about building. For me, it's about storytelling and the connection between we all have stories, we all have lived lives, and really the only things that divide us are our approaches, like cultural approaches, what we've been taught how to be, or language
Hmm.
barriers, but those can be overcome. And maybe like our faith and belief systems, but even that to me is less important than just kind of if we can just share story, we figure out how to accept other people. I think that's just who I am, and that's where it came from.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
for me, my Japan experience was, how people always say you grow up in college, college is or something like that. But for me, my true coming of age, my like claiming who I was as a person was because I spent time in a culture where I did not speak the language, did not know the culture. And I always said if I
Yeah.
ever became a zillionaire, which is never going to happen, but I'd pay for every student to be able to go to a country where they don't speak their language.
Yeah.
Because that shows you that those connections can be made anyway. I feel like I'm babbling.
Yeah. I mean, for no, not so much, but not for me at least. Babbling. I think there's a real powerful gift. There's many, but one
Yeah.
powerful gift that's coming up for me with what you just offered, Lisa, is
Hmm.
the power of letting go of. I think you used the word perfection,
Yeah.
um, and that maybe some of the traditional views of the arts, like Broadway shows, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
or the Met, or other kinds of formal gatherings of art, usually has a these are the artists and these are the best works in this field or this medium. And there's something powerful about letting go of that perfection
Right.
burden
Yeah.
and being an imperfect speaker of English, being a person who doesn't have tons of acting or improv experience. In fact, it reminds me as an improviser that one of the mavens and goddesses of improv theater, Viola Spolin, says in one of her books, everyone can act, everyone can
Mhm.
improvise, and that often is what folks don't tap into for me. Even with our language teaching or teach, they're like, well, I don't speak English well enough, I can't improvise. You're good at this, you have the arts degree, you're somehow skilled in some way to do it. There's a everyone can do this feeling in what we're creating in this conversation that I
Yeah.
think punctuates a newer approach to the arts that many
Yeah.
folks who just consume it usually may not consider. They're like, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative, I'm not good enough. I'll enjoy the real people who can be good enough, creative enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that for me, I think has become my kind of my passion or my purpose is to make everyone recognize that everyone is creative, everyone has it within them. It's just that society has kind of said, unless you're the top in the top, unless you're going to make $1 million in your book, and unless you're going to be,
Right.
unless you're famous, whatever, that somehow you're not good enough. And I cry bullshit. I cry,
Yeah.
because for me, it's like the I write about this a lot in Recreating the World. It's that if we allowed ourselves to tap into we can call it the inner child or that part of us where we were allowed to play and explore and not worry about whether we were doing something right, we would achieve so much more. And that's in business, that's in, any you can apply this anywhere because if you let go of worrying about whether we're doing it right, then there is no wrong. You
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's been my goal is to bring people together by giving them permission to just let go and have fun and play and create in whatever way. And they don't have to be aiming towards writing a novel or putting on a perfect show or anything. They're just trying to share their story in the way they need to share their story. And to me, story is not just about words, it's about,
Sure.
expression
Sure.
and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I think my purpose is and what my purpose is for my channel too, like
Yeah.
for my YouTube channel is like, would I like to get tons of followers? Absolutely. Who doesn't want that? Would I like to someday be able to make a little money out of it? Sure, why not? But that's not the goal. The goal is to show people, for me, that 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 it's okay to just say, you know what, I don't want to just do things perfectly. I want to do things because I enjoy doing them in my way, find
Mm,
new ways to doing them, I think. What is your goal for Me again. Hope you're enjoying this discussion. This is not where it ended. We have one final little discussion about Luke's purpose and goals in with creativity, play, and community building, and his venture into YouTube. So I would invite you to go over to his channel. Link will be below. Please like, share, comment, add questions, add topics that we would like you would like us to to discuss, maybe recommend some interesting guests, and let's take this community, make this community grow. Thank you. Let's play together. Bye.